There is a moment that almost every person who keeps a feeder has imagined. The bird on the nearby branch, a seed in your open hand, the question of whether it might actually come. Welcome to Backyard Bird Mind. Subscribe if you're new. What you probably haven't been told is that this isn't wishful thinking. It's a biological process, and understanding what has to happen inside a bird's new. For it to cross that distance changes what the moment means. Start with what is actually being asked of the bird. When a wild animal takes food from a human hand, it is not performing a trick. It is not being tamed. It is not doing something that requires any special training on the bird's part. What it is doing is overriding the most fundamental behavioral instruction that its nervous system carries. Do not get within striking distance of something larger than you. Every bird that visits your feeder is a creature that evolved over millions of years in an environment where anything larger than it was a potential predator. That evolutionary history is not erased by a few months of watching a person fill a seed tray without incident. It is present in every reflex the bird carries, in the flight initiation distance it maintains, in the angle at which it positions itself relative to any potential threat, in the speed with which it departs when something unexpected happens. The wariness is not a personality quirk. It is the behavioral inheritance of every ancestor the bird ever had. For a bird to eat from your hand, that entire inheritance has to be set aside, not forgotten. Birds don't forget their threat programming, set aside specifically and deliberately for this person in this context, because the accumulated weight of everything the bird has observed about you has been sufficient to reclassify you from potential threat to something outside that category entirely. This is why it matters. The hand is not a feeder at a different height. It is a fundamentally different ask. It requires a level of individual trust that the feeder relationship, however warm it feels, does not require. A bird can use a feeder while maintaining a full flight initiation distance from the human who filled it. A bird that lands on your hand has eliminated that distance completely. It has decided, in the most literal physical sense, that you are not a threat even at zero distance. The process by which birds arrive at this decision follows a specific and observable progression, one that most people never see because they don't know what they're looking at. It begins with what researchers call the approach tolerance gradient. Every bird has what is effectively a personal threat radius around it, a distance below which it will flush. That distance is not fixed. It is shaped by the individual bird's assessment of the specific human in question, what it changes over time as that assessment accumulates more data. A bird that will not let you closer than 10 feet today may, after several weeks of consistent, predictable, non-threatening behavior, allow you within 5, then 3, then 1. The threshold shifts incrementally, each shift representing a small update in the bird's threat model of you. The gradient is not linear, and it is not smooth. Some days the bird allows you closer than the day before. Other days it flushes earlier than it did last week because something happened. A sudden movement, an unfamiliar sound, that temporarily reset a portion of the accumulated confidence. This is normal and expected. The overall trajectory is what matters, not any individual data point. Over time, across many mornings of consistent behavior, the radius contracts. The bird that once flushed at 30 feet now holds its position at 10. The one that held at 10 now stays at 5. The one that stayed at 5 begins to watch your hand. Most feeder owners experience this progression without naming it. They notice that the birds no longer flush when they open the back door, that they can refill the feeder while birds are still on it, that a particular bird stays on the branch when they pass underneath it rather than lifting off at 40 feet. These are not random fluctuations. They are data points in the bird's ongoing assessment of you, and they are moving in a direction. Hand feeding begins before your hand is extended. It begins the moment a bird stops maintaining its maximum safe distance from you. The bird that stays on the branch when you're 5 feet away is already practicing the fundamental behavioral shift that hand feeding requires. It is learning that being close to you has no negative consequence. Every experience it has of being near you without danger is a revision of the threat model in your favor. What the science adds to this is the mechanism. Research into flight initiation distance in passerine birds has shown that habituation to a specific individual human, as opposed to humans in general, is a real and measurable phenomenon. Birds classify people individually. The bird that stays calm when you approach has learned that you specifically are safe. It is not generalizing to all humans. If a stranger walks through the same yard, the same bird that let you stand 3 feet away will flush at 30. The trust is not transferable. It was built specifically about you, and it applies specifically to you. This is the crucial piece of information that changes how hand feeding should be understood. The bird that comes to your hand has not become domesticated. It has not lost its wildness or its fear of humans. It has made a highly specific, individually targeted decision that you, your particular footstep pattern, your particular voice, your particular way of moving through the space, are not in the category of things it needs to flee from. That decision took weeks to build and applies to no one else. If you want to share this, subscribe to Backyard Bird Mind and pass it on. Every week there is something here that makes the ordinary birds in your yard feel less ordinary. The practical progression toward hand feeding is not complicated, but it requires patience of a specific kind. The patience of someone who is willing to let the bird make every decision on its own timeline. The first stage is simply being present. Stand or sit near the feeder at consistent times. Do not approach the birds. Do not make sudden movements. Let them build up a data set of you as a static, non-threatening element of the environment. Some people do this for days, some for weeks. The timeline varies by species and by individual bird. Chickadees and tufted titmice tend to habituate faster than other species. They are naturally curious and relatively bold in their assessment of novel situations. Nuthatches are often surprisingly quick, despite their reputation for wariness. House finches take longer, as do cardinals, which maintain larger personal threat radii and cease. Require more accumulated evidence before revising their classifications downward. But within each species, there is also individual variation. Some birds within a flock are simply bolder, more willing to update their models, more willing to test the edge of their own comfort. Those are the ones to watch. The one that holds its position when the others flush. The one that watches you from slightly closer than its flockmates. That bird is the most likely candidate, and it will usually arrive at your hand before any of the others. The second stage is reducing distance. Move your chair or your standing position slightly closer to the feeder each day, provided the birds are not alarmed by your current position. If they flush consistently when you're at a given distance, hold that distance until they stop flushing. The goal is to find the edge of their tolerance and stay just within it, letting their tolerance expand naturally rather than pushing it. The third stage is the hand. Remove the seed from the feeder or from a nearby location. Place it in your palm and hold your hand steady near where the seed usually is. Keep still, keep quiet, and wait. This is the part most people rush, and the rushing is what fails it. The bird does not need encouragement. It does not need the hand moved closer. It needs the hand to be exactly where it is for as long as it takes without any additional signal that changes the equation. Your stillness is the offer. The bird will decide the rest. What you will likely notice first is that the birds watch you more intently. They may approach the empty feeder, see that the seed is now in your hand and retreat. They may fly to a nearby branch and sit, head tilted, assessing. This is the evaluation phase. The bird running the updated calculation on whether the risk of approaching your hand is lower than the discomfort of not having the seed. For some birds on some days, the calculation will resolve immediately. For others, it takes days of repeated attempts. When it happens, it tends to happen quickly. The bird drops from the branch, hovers for a fraction of a second above your palm and takes the seed. The contact lasts less than a second, and then it is gone to the nearest branch to eat. That fraction of a second is what this entire process was building toward, and what is happening in it biologically is this. The bird has temporarily suspended its entire flight initiation response for you. Specifically, every nerve ending that would normally fire in the presence of a predator-sized creature at zero distance has been overridden by the assessment it built about you across weeks of observation. You are not a threat in this bird's experience of the world. It knows this, the way it knows which branch is stable and which seeds are worth eating through accumulated, tested, reliable experience. Some people describe the first time it happens as feeling surprisingly emotional, not sentimental, genuinely moved in a way they didn't fully anticipate, and the science gives a reason for that response. What the bird is offering in that moment is something that wild animals are not designed to offer to humans. The trust required for a bird to eliminate its flight initiation distance completely for any creature of your size is trust that its entire evolutionary history was arguing against. It arrived at that trust anyway, through observation, through patience, through the accumulated weight of mornings, when you showed up and did nothing to justify its fear. The bird doesn't know it is doing something remarkable. It is simply acting on a conclusion it has reached. But you know, and the knowledge of what it cost that bird in biological terms to step off the branch and onto your hand, the override of a survival instinct that has been running for millions of years, is what makes the moment worth understanding as more than just something charming that happened in the garden. The moment the bird lands on your hand is not the beginning of a relationship. It is the culmination of one that was already long underway. It is the bird announcing, in the clearest possible terms, the verdict it has been quietly building since the first morning it watched you from the branch while you filled the feeder. You passed, and it wanted you to know. Have you ever had a bird eat from your hand, or tried and watched the bird get close before deciding not to? Tell me what you saw in the comments. Subscribe to Backyard Bird Mind if this changed how you'll think about the next bird that lands near you, and share this with someone who has been watching birds and wondering if it could happen to them.